and welcome back to the Ask Me channel here at YouTube. And welcome to a big edition of the collection update. Now, all of this was, of course, all purchased right during the whole month of October. And the bulk of it was actually also purchased when I was down in Fresno, California for about 3 weeks. So everything all culminated into just a really big haul here, and everything is just, the stacks here is just big. So without wasting any time, let's definitely get into the stack right here, and I got it all right here. This just went hog wild down there. All right, so let me definitely get into though the albums playing in the background. This of course was purchased while I was down in Fresno, California. This of course is Pain from Rose Tattoo. Let me get the booklet out because the glare is bad. This one right here, Pain, which this was their comeback album from like 2002. Though I think there was like an album that was like released in 2000, but this was kind of like a proper comeback album for Rose Tattoo after beats from a single drum or something like that. The album though right here, this is a fucking good album. I mean, listen to this album non-stop. Just a killer album. Definitely more on the vein of the first two or first three Rose Tattoo albums. Just that good old blue-collar, pubby, Australian hard rock that you expect. Just a great album. Of course, the producer of this album was Rainer Hansel, who of course was guy who was running SPV for the time being, which this was released on. There's the back. Who of course sadly passed away this year. And another one who was also related to Rose Tattoo was George Young, who of course helped with managing Rose Tattoo and producing their albums. Of course, was all behind the Hour Productions label. Also passed away this year. So in a way, this is kind of a little tribute to both those two. Killer album. Found it for about I think $5 used at Rasputin Music, and I'll definitely get into more of that haul here, but that's definitely soon to come here in the video. Still, Pain from Rose Tattoo, just a killer hard rock album, and that's again, like I'm saying, like I said, it's playing in the background. Just heavy. All right. However, it's definitely before I really get into more of my more pickups. This one is a new album, and I had picked this up already. I think earlier in October. As of course is The Guillotine from Vulture. This could have been picked up in September. I don't know, but still, this is another album. I already did a review for this one, but I didn't show this in any of my collection updates before this one, so I had to. I'll definitely link you to that review, and I've been talking about this album throughout my Metal-tober, which ended. So, yep, The Guillotine from Vulture. This is probably the newest one, though. This one I just did a review for. That's, of course, is Rod from Ram. Killer album. And I'll link you to that review here. Of course, before I wanted to do this video, I definitely was waiting on this one as well. So when it came to actually doing this video, finally. Enough said. Killer album from Ram. An album that just, yeah. This one, of course, I just picked. This, of course, is not a new album, but this is a new reissue, and I'll definitely get to another new reissue here. And it's a box set, but first, I'll definitely get to this one. This one I had purchased down in Fresno at Walmart. This, of course, is the reissue of Whitesnake's 1987 album. This, of course, is a 27 remaster from Rhino Records. I know it's the 1987 album, but the thing is, I once had a copy of this album, but I accidentally broke it by, yeah, like I said, by accident. So that was like back in 2008, and since then I hadn't really had a copy of Whitesnake since then. So finally, well, putting it back in my collection, since I had the other Whitesnake albums anyway, like the whole box set with their classic Deep Purple sounding albums, to then having the deluxe edition of Slide It In. I needed a copy of 1987 anyways. Interesting fact is that the track listing for this one, since I think the older remaster deluxe edition or so, they've been going by the UK track listing. So in a way it was kind of an upgrade, because the original CD copy I had was just the original American track listing. So songs such as You're Gonna Break My Heart Again and Don't Turn Away were kind of new to me. Still, I think of the better, the two songs that were new to me, I think You're Gonna Break My Heart was, I think, one of the better ones, because it's a rockin', hard rockin', while Don't Turn Away just seems like a really kind of a weak way to end the album, because it's very ballady, just like Is This Love. Two of probably the most songs I could live without. But as the same goes for Here I Go Again, the 87 version. I can live without that version, but the version that was on Saint and Sinners, I actually quite like a lot more than the version on here. Still, there is still something I like about this album. Bad Boys, Give Me All Your Love, Children of the Night, are just killer tracks in my opinion. Still, glad to have this sound back in my collection. Alright, finally let's get to what I was talking about, the reissue that is a box set. This, of course, is the box set from Airborne, Australian hard rockers. It's like, I could have put this album right after Rose Tattoo, but I'll save that for another video. So, again, this is the recent box set from Airborne called Diamond Cuts, and of course it features their first 3 albums and the Diamond Cuts, the B-Sides disc, which of course includes 2 unreleased songs from the No Guts, No Glory album, and of course the documentary titled It's All for Rock and Roll. So in a way, this is a nice roundup box set. I'll talk about more about this in a box set showcase video where I really go into more depth about it. Still, finally glad to have pretty much the band's discography now. Because for the while, all I had was No Guts, No Glory, and their last album, Breaking Out of Hell. But finally, having Running Wild and Black Dog Barking was what I needed. Just a killer box set. So, finally, let's actually get time to actually get into, surprisingly, Iron Maiden pickups. Yeah, something I normally didn't really do for me at all. Iron Maiden is one of those bands I didn't have a whole lot from besides Killers, Zimmer the Beast, and their 2010 album, The Final Frontier, which is right here. This right here, which of course is the Mission Edition, which is in a metal steel case. That's all I had, but starting from like this past month, I ended up picking up from Walmart here in Susanville a copy of Peace of Mind, which I didn't have. And when I went, which again, I kind of showed this in one of my videos or so, my last ones, but in that video, I think it was actually for the artwork, heavy metal artwork or so that has a horror feel, something like that, for Power Metal Tober. I definitely showed this. I'm definitely happy to finally have a copy of this album in here. This is definitely a good album from Iron Maiden, probably one of my other favorites from that. But How's Effie, before when I went down to Fresno, I actually ended up, surprisingly, buying quite a bit of Iron Maiden. So it all ended up turning into, well, an Iron Maiden haul. Pretty much most of it, of course, ending with getting this Iron Maiden mask that I picked up at Spirit of Halloween, which of course is part of that. Of course, being part of a line of masks, as you can see right there. But yeah, ended up, which, it was a cool mask anyway. It's on the Peace of Mind album, like I just showed. Just a killer mask. So I'll see about putting it back here. So with that, I ended up picking up quite a bit of Iron Maiden, like I said. So at So at Best Buy, I pretty much, when I was down there, I ended up finding 3 Iron Maiden albums. But I'm just gonna, but all those is mixed in with here, so I'm gonna shut up and show. Power Slave, picked this one up, like I said. Finally happy to have a copy of Power Slave in here. This and Peace of Mind are probably only 2 of the more recent represses that I have, because it all is released through BMG. Not Metal Is or Raw Power. So these are definitely one of the more recent represses, and because of they are not also, hint why they're not enhanced CDs like the older reissues from like 1998. Even though these are the same 1998 remasters, they are indeed represses, but without the music videos and all the other cool stuff. And of course, after that was Somewhere in Time. Finally happy to have this album, killer Iron Maiden album, as for sure. Caught Somewhere in Time, Sea of Madness, Heaven Can Wait, Stranger in a Strange Land, all killer tracks in my opinion. Really good album. Then of course, at FYE, I also ended up picking up another Iron Maiden album. That's, of course, with Seventh Son of Seventh Son. But that was on my second visit to FYE. I'll definitely get, at the very end of this video, I'll get to my first visit to FYE, which turned out to be quite surprising. Anyways, this was an album I never listened to. But finally, when I picked this up, I finally gave this album a listen. And this is a good album. This is a really good album from Iron Maiden, as usual. Moonchild, Infinite Dreams. The title track, the Clairvoyant, the Prophecy, Only the Good Die Young, all a really good album. And of course, the last one I had picked up at Best Buy was Fear of the Dark. You know what? I'm gonna have to say this is kind of an underappreciated album. I think this album is actually a pretty good album. Songs such as Be Quick or Be Dead, From Here to Eternity, Afraid to Shoot Strangers, Fear is the Key, The Fugitive, Chains of Misery, Judas Be My Guide, Weekend Warrior, and the title track are all killer songs in my opinion. Just a really underappreciated album and a pretty underrated Iron Maiden album. So, was happy to finally have this album. Then at Rasputin ended up picking up on my visit to there when I picked up this Rose Tattoo album, I ended up picking up a Real Live Dead one. And this, of course, what surprised me at first, this was after I bought it, because I could not, what's the word I'm looking for? I could not pass up on the price for the sandwich. Of course, it was like $4 used. And it was marked down to $4 at Rasputin, because it was originally, for Rasputin's original price was $10. But when I went there, they had marked it down to $4. But after I bought it, I then noticed that this is the raw power pressing, which has become a lot harder to come by these days. And online, for people that ask for this particular copy, how you know is if you see that, or you see the Made in England name there. People ask for this online. It usually ends up being like $40. So it was quite surprising to actually come across this copy of a real life dead one for about $4. Just so much cheaper than what people asked for, and it was, in a way, I could not pass this up, so I was happy to finally get it. Normally, this gets regarded as one of Iron Man's worst live albums. I don't know. It's not really a bad live album at all. I think it's a very enjoyable, especially for like disc 2, which has some songs on there from that album from like Somewhere in Time up to Fear of the Dark. Normally never gets played in Iron Man's live sets, and of course on disc 2. Pretty much half of the debut gets played, and that is pretty cool. So in a way, this is kind of a cool live album to have, and I think it's a good live album. Just a good live album. So finally have that. So that pretty much rounds it up for my Iron Man collection haul. Sooner or later this year, I'm going to have to get 2 more or 3 more, or maybe 4 more Iron Man live albums, or albums in general, because I might end up even doing a collection of a Iron Man collection video somewhere down the road or so. Alright, so with that, good. Finally, let's get into the last batch of this big ass collection haul. Pretty much bulk of it was picked up down in Fresno. So again, on my visit again to Raspin, I also ended up picking up a sealed copy of Razor Fist and Yell from Alice Cooper. Finally happy to have a copy of this album. This is one of my favorite Alice Cooper albums. Actually, I could probably say this is probably my third, probably in my top 3 Alice Cooper albums, next to like Killer and Welcome to My Nightmare. Both these 3 albums to me are my favorites, my top favorites. This album was, of course, was also the last for this lineup of Alice Cooper, which featured Kane Roberts and Kip Winger. Still, this is, of course, was one of its most metal albums in a way. I think that this was a killer album. Better than Constrictor, and in some ways even better than some of the albums that would come at least after this. Mostly Trash and Hey Stupid. Even though Hey Stupid wasn't a bad album at all, Trash was not all too bad. But to me, this just seemed to kind of, I think, did much more to really bring back that classic sort of feel of the early albums. Sure, done a much more of a more heavy metal way. It still turned out to be a good album. I think he really was in full force on this one. Just a killer album. And also the fact, I think Alice Cooper might be the only person to probably have both Vincent Price and Robert Englund appear on his tracks. I don't think no one else has ever done that. Milestone in pretty much in hard rock and heavy metal history. Alright, and here we go. Let's get to these other 2 that I had picked up at Walmart when I was down there, which of course was Facelift from Alice in Chains. Yeah, probably the only grunge album here in the collection, but I actually like this. This one, Soundgarden's Louder Than Love, and Nirvana's Bleach are probably 3 of my most favorite grunge albums. And was happy to finally get this. Of course, I had to kind of replace my cassette copy, because when I was listening to my old cassette copy, it was trashed. So I had to get a copy that I can definitely listen to for years and years. So, just a killer album, in my opinion. Just a great album. And of course, the last one I picked up at Walmart here when I was down there, of course, is Ozzy Osbourne's Tribute. I always passed up on this, but at this time I really couldn't, because it was a live album anyways, recorded during the Diary of a Madman tour. I didn't have this out in my collection, and was, I'm kind of happy to have it in my collection. It's pretty cool live show anyways. Just a good live album from Ozzy. That's all I can say. Alright, so let's definitely get into the rest of the albums I picked up from like Rasputin. Finally was able to come across a copy of Night in the Ruts by Aerosmith. This, of course, was a brand new sealed copy. Man, some of these really underappreciated Aerosmith albums, especially ones like Draw the Line, Night in the Ruts, and Rock and Hard Place, are so hard to come by for me. They are such hard albums to come by, but Rock and Hard Place and this album I was actually able to come across, and I'm happy to have a copy of Night in the Ruts. This is a killer album from Aerosmith. And this was, of course, for the time, it was the last sound for Joe Perry before coming back in like 1985. But this is a killer album. It's a very British sounding album because it's very Led Zeppelin sounding at times. But it's a killer album. It's fun, and it's also the only Aerosmith album to. It was the first, I think, not to be produced by Jack Douglas. Maybe the second. But this, of course, was the only album, though, to be produced by Gary Lyons, who, of course, was working with, who had worked with Foreigner, but then would then work with, like, UFO and Saxon. Still, this is just a killer album. 3 Mile Smile, Bone to Bone, Coney Island, Whitefish Boy, which is, I guess, a slang for a used rubber. No Surprise, Chiquita, Cheesecake, though I don't think the song's about cheesecake. Still, all great songs. Of course, having a cover of the Yardbirds, Think About It, killer cover. I'm happy to have this in my collection. It's a killer Aerosmith album. I probably would put this as one of my favorites since, like, Rocks and Get Your Wings. It's a killer album. Alright. Surprisingly, I don't know why I have to say surprising. Finally was able to get one of this guy's albums. Surprisingly, I put this guy off because of, I don't know, something about, I guess, I don't know if this guy was going to be up my alley, but this guy definitely was up my alley, and that was due to most of the talk about this guy on the VC. That's, of course, is Frank Marino. Of course, with Mahogany Rush's 1979 album, Tales of the Unexpected. Found this at Rasputin used in good shape for about $4. Killer album. It's a really killer album. First half of this album, of course, is studio, while the second half is live, and I think that's probably my favorite side of this album is the live part, which is just very much high-energized Jimi Hendrix. Just a killer album in a way, and I'm definitely going to be picking up more of this guy's albums. Just really killer guitar player out of Canada. Just a great album. That's all I gotta say. I can't really say anything bad about this. This Sister Change, his cover of All Along the Watchtower, which is very close to Jimi Hendrix's version. Thus, it's a no-brainer because the guy is very Jimi Hendrix influenced. Probably too influenced, but that was his goal, and he pulled it off. Of course, the title track, which is just a very jazz fusion-y type of feel to it. Great track. Everything about this I like. It's a fucking great album. I'll be getting more from Mahogany Rush and Frank Marino. Speaking of Jimi Hendrix prodigies, was able to finally, after being down there and my first visit to Rasputin, I could not find, I wanted to look because after thinking of Frank Marino, I was thinking of this other guy who was also Jimi Hendrix influenced and inspired. First time, could not find this guy's albums. Second time, I went up to pick up, was supposed to pick up Ram's new album, but didn't. But then found, Night in the Ruts. I finally come across this guy's album. One of his. Of course, is Uli, John Roth, with the first sound from Electric Sun, titled Earthquake. This, of course, was his first after leaving Scorpions. Killer album. Basically, to me, this is much more of the follow-up to Taken by Force than Love Drive, which, of course, was released on the same year. Not that I don't like Love Drive. I think that was a great album, but it becomes almost kind of almost a hard pill to swallow to actually really find out that Uli was just as much the heart to Scorpions sound from that era of Scorpions, with like In Trance, Virgin Killer, and Taken by Force. The guy it's like when they lost him, Scorpions did lose a sound in a way. They lost something that I don't think they ever truly really recovered from, because of course that's probably the charm to that era, which is now I would be called the Matthias Jab. Was it? Yeah, the Matthias Jabs of era of Scorpions. But just a killer album. I don't know. This guy's music, his whole guitar playing and everything, I swear, I could probably... to me, it makes it feel like that I'm basically relaxing on a beach. Just watching the waves go by. This guy's playing is so fucking relaxing that it's... I just get lost into the guys playing this solo because I'm just so relaxed by it. I know that's kind of odd, but that's just the way that this guy gives me, and it's just a killer album from here. I'll definitely be getting more from Uli because I just love this guy's guitar playing ever since listening to his stuff with Scorpions. And another thing I gotta point out, mostly I hear a lot of people get put off by this guy's vocals. He ain't the greatest singer, but that's probably because I was so used... in a way, I got really used to his singing on some of the songs that he sang on in Scorpions. Mostly being like Dark Lady, Polar Nights, and Hellcat. Still, killer album from Uli and Electric Sun. Now, of course, talking about other Scorpions guitar players, here we got, of course, is Michael Schenker Group's debut album. Of course, he did play with Scorpions. If people want to act like that he wasn't, or don't think that, oh, he was never in Scorpions, he was. It was on their first album. Still, finally happy to have a copy of the debut. Finally, only had a copy of the second album. Finally have a copy of the debut. Killer album. Of course, this is the 2009 remaster, which of course features some bonus tracks, mostly being the 1979 demo that was recorded, the only thing recorded between Michael Schenker and bass player Billy Sheehan. And I swear, fucking Billy Sheenan's playing sticks out like a sore thumb when playing with the Michael Schenker. It's like you got two different styles, and it's almost, I feel like it's like Clash of the Titans. It just clashes with each other, and I don't know if it's a great sound or a good sound, but it's a very interesting sound. Still, this is definitely a great album, and for the bonus track, for those who... It would probably be the only reason why anyone would buy the 2009 remaster. Still, glad to have it. Picked it up for about $7 or $8. Finally, like I said, when talking about 777 Sun, on my first visit to FYE, I went there, and it was my second visit to pick up 777 Sun, like I said. But on my first visit, I had a hard time looking for stuff there, because sometimes FYE, there might be things that from being down the FYE in Fresno, California, you get so used to the selection that everything becomes the same to you. But there'll be times where you will come across something that is basically very, that is so kind of surprising to come by, and you wouldn't expect to find it probably in other places, mostly being Rasputin music down there. It's like a game of Russian roulette. because each time you pull the trigger, it's usually going to be an empty slot. But the minute you finally pull that one trigger and the bullet hits is when you do come across something that is pretty damn surprising. And that's what happened. That's, of course, was finding the deluxe edition of Fireball by Deep Purple. Happy to have this album in my collection. And, of course, when I wanted to get this album, it was going to be this particular copy. I almost originally was going to pick up the CD copy of Perfect Strangers, but that's because I can have that that other track that was only exclusive to the CD copy of Perfect Strangers, because I already have the album on vinyl. But I would have if I didn't come across this, which I swear there was something behind it. It seemed kind of out of place. It didn't seem like that. What is this? I pick it up, and it was the deluxe edition. And it was for about $5 used. The deluxe editions of some of the Deep Purple albums, from like at least the first 3, are so hard to come by here in the States, especially down in Fresno, California. I can't find any of their stuff. Online it'll be easy, of course, but out in the wild it's so tough for me. But I finally did, and it was for this album, and I never had Fireball. And I'm happy as hell to have Fireball in my collection. Let me kind of show this off for a bit. It's, of course, is in a slip cover case here. And I never listened to this album, and finally, when getting the deluxe edition, it finally gave me the chance to actually listen to this album, and this is a killer album. I've normally seen a lot of people say it's not nearly as good as either N-Rock or Machine Head. I think this album is just as good as those 2 albums. This would probably be like, surprisingly, this probably might end up being my second favorite, my second or third favorite Deep Purple album. Just a really killer album, and I think for this deluxe edition, it makes it even more killer because you end up getting the addition of like something like the B-side tracks and some unreleased songs, mostly being like a Strange Kind of Woman, I'm Alone. Of course, you got the 2 unreleased songs here being Freedom and Slow Train. It almost becomes like an extended version of Fireball. Any of those songs could have also replaced maybe Anyone's Daughter, which is it's a fun track in its own right, but in some ways it kind of breaks the album itself because it's for the most part the album is just prime Deep Purple, just classic hard rock and Deep Purple in my opinion. But still, all great tracks, all killer. Their normally unreleased songs usually tend to be kind of hit and miss, but Deep Purple's unreleased songs, they're almost just as good as some of the actually released songs. Just killer album. Finally happy to have it. Whew. This was sure a long video for sure because this was a big collection update. A lot of albums here that I picked up. Of course, again, the Iron Maiden haul. Just all killer stuff. If you definitely have checked these albums out, or definitely have listened to these, you can definitely post your comments down below. Still, man, and yet none of it ever really broke my money. So, hope you enjoyed this big edition of the collection update. I'll see you next time. Later. And I'll definitely be doing another album of the week, and well, we'll be revealing my next album versus album video. So, later.